Mark Horvath is the founder of Invisible People, a nonprofit media publisher working to reframe homelessness. At the height of a successful career as a TV executive, Mark's life unraveled, and he went unhoused for 8 years. Then came recovery, a new sense of purpose, and an unvarnished approach to documenting the humanity at the core of this complex issue. It's a strategy that's garnered more than 1 million subscribers worldwide and new hopes for evidence-based solutions to one of the fastest-growing problems of our time. Welcome to The Science of Good, where we sit down with cause leaders who are disrupting the status quo, tackling our toughest societal problems, and seeking better ways to spark change. Mark, welcome. We're so glad to have you here in this discussion with us today.
Well, thank you for having me.
First off, let's just get started with, tell us about your nonprofit that you founded, Invisible People.
Well, to start, we also have to interject my story a little bit, because many years ago, I had a great job in the television industry, and I ended up homeless on Hollywood Boulevard. And I rebuilt my life back to a 3-bedroom house, new cushy marketing job, and in 2008, the economy tanked and I lost everything again except my sobriety. And I want to tell you that I was driven to make the world a better place, but the truth is I just needed purpose. I needed a reason to get up in the morning. And that purpose for people, whatever socioeconomic level, is very important. So for me, that purpose was I grabbed a camera and I went out and I started interviewing homeless people. Now, I had lost my Avid workstation. If you don't know what an Avid is, back then, now there's different software, but back then that's what people used to edit television shows. And I lost my Avid workstation, so I couldn't edit the videos. So I almost didn't do it. And then I said, nobody's going to watch this stuff. I'll just upload it raw and unedited. And that was the magic. And 2008, November, Invisible People was started. We are a nonprofit media publisher. For many years, it was just me interviewing homeless people, first-person interviews. And now it is turned into a media publisher. We do news on Apple News and Google News. We do documentaries. We do animations, scripted films. We have some new research coming out. We've done a couple of what America believes about homelessness and then barriers to progress. And this one, we go into more of a deep dive of how to reach different demographics of people.
Mark, I know you've been traveled all over the country, filming people's stories. Also done work in Canada and Europe. Tell us how you decide where to go next.
Oh, gosh, that is an interesting question that doesn't have an easy answer. So we were talking earlier before you hit record about Finland. And Finland came about very unique because I'm scrappy, and how I run Invisible People, because there was never really enough funding, is I buy everything on a double miles card and pay it off at the end of the month. Then COVID hit and you can't travel. So I had all these air miles and I said, where can we go that will have the most impact? And it was Finland. So we went to Finland and did a documentary, very well received. And where we go. So for instance, we're doing a documentary with the Corporation of Supportive Housing on prison reentry to supportive housing. That was instigated or inspired from Corporation of Supportive Housing. So everything in between. Some of it is organic because I have the travel funds. Some of it is because a third party says, hey, this is an important story. Some of it is because our focus is to, what we're trying to do is highlight the crisis of criminalization, which you saw with our Grants Pass documentary. But I believe also to do that, we have to show the alternative to criminalization, which is housing people and actually ending homelessness. So Hennepin County was a follow-up to Finland, which we did. And that was very much intentional because people are saying, oh, that's great. Finland can do it, but we're a different country. No, we can do it too. Here, let me show you. So we look for stories to expose criminalization of homelessness, to highlight solutions to homelessness.
Mhm.
And then we also very much target harm reduction. We have a very controversial documentary coming out this week or by the end of next week on managed alcohol programs.
Mm.
You know, Mark, you talked a little bit about this. I want to know if we can get a little bit deeper, because problems like affordable housing are only getting worse, right? And you talked a little bit about Finland being that place where you're seeing things turned around. Have
Yeah.
you encountered other places where you see that there's been a turnaround there as well?
Well, so here's the issue. In America, we lack the political and public will for evidence-based solutions like housing. The statistic that I believe tells the story because statistics alone without the story don't have meaning. But for every $100 increase in median rent, homelessness increases by 9%. Let me say that again. For every $100 increase in median rent, homelessness increases by 9%. So when you look at criminalization of homelessness, which absolutely does nothing to solve the crisis, then you have to look at here in California, for an inmate, 1 year is $132,000 per year.
Wow.
That's crazy. To put somebody into a hospital is $30,000 a month. For a shelter, that's $6,000 a month. But putting them into permanent supportive housing is $4,000 a month, roughly. Each community is a little different, even the cost of incarceration. But if we do not fix the affordable housing crisis, and especially because we have a perfect storm of homelessness coming, people aren't talking about how there are robots now that clean toilets. Chipotle's testing a robot that makes burritos. The automation that is coming is going to create jobs, but they're computer science jobs. The entry level jobs, you're already seeing this if you go to a fast food place, there's a kiosk to take your order. I've recently been in a couple of airports and there's complete stores. Amazon also famously has one, stores that don't have any checkout clerks. You enter your credit card when you walk in, and when you walk out, it charges your credit card with whatever you put in the basket. So these jobs that people rely on, and many of them don't even cover rent already, are going to disappear. So what then? And the answer is, a universal basic income. But in our country, we can't even get universal basic health care.
So homelessness is this massive systems failure,
Right.
and prevention seems to be key, because once you've been evicted or once you're unhoused, it seems like the crawl back is really, really steep uphill. Is there something in place so that you're working on that prevention kind of front end case management?
Yes. So you bring up a great point, and I think it's and it was a hard story for us to tell. Hennepin County took their COVID funds and they invested in a community-wide solution. They invested in affordable housing. They invested in eviction prevention. They invested in outreach in shelters and supportive housing. Not just one, but all of it, to create a community-wide system to prevent and solve homelessness. Then when COVID money ran out, they had the data to say, oh, this actually works. Then it was easier for them to get state funding and other funding to expand these programs that work. One of the things that happens, and we're all just humans, right? We all want to believe whatever we're doing is the best. So there's always been this war between housing and shelters. The shelter operators are threatened by housing, and the housing people just want housing only. No, it's housing and shelters. And without eviction prevention, it all falls apart. It all has to work. And that is a hard paradigm for people because they have to talk, and I'm just going to paint a very authentic brush here. The nonprofit sector, we all, go to each other's gala and we shake each other's hand and we say, oh, you're doing wonderful work. And then we go back to our office and fight for the same scraps. And, so it's not really conducive for us to talk about the systemic crises that cause homelessness, because we want to paint ourselves as the hero so that we can fundraise for ourselves and what we're doing. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. People have to fundraise, and most are doing really amazing work that needs more resources. But what we have to do, which Hennepin County was able to do, is create this community-wide system and then fight for it. Sadly, we have to continue to fight for, I'm just going to be real here. It is something I struggle with these days is it shouldn't be this hard to help people.
It only makes sense. You've described homelessness before as a systems failure. It makes sense that it will take a systems solution, multifaceted system to prevent it and solve it. I'm so interested about Hennepin County. What is so special about Hennepin? I get it that the funding part was taken care of with COVID funding, but who got all those different players to coalesce around this issue?
You're hitting the nail on the head. It takes somebody that is going to champion, somebody, whether it be at the local level, the state level, or the federal level, or in this case, the county level, has to champion everybody working together. And as I stated earlier, that's like herding cats, right? It's not the easiest thing to get everybody to work together. And that's not a nonprofit or a for-profit issue. It's a human issue. And so people, somebody has to champion it. Somebody has to show that there's value in this collaborative effort, that the nonprofit or whatever entity can also thrive, and together they can prevent and solve homelessness. Because otherwise, I call it dancing madly backwards, right? You're doing a lot of work and not a lot is happening.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, in Hennepin, was there a backbone organization or someone who took the lead?
Well, the
there?
county drove it. The county drove it.
Okay.
Yeah,
Right,
in Hennepin's case, and it's different. It's every municipality, every state, has different resources, different leaders. So it's not a one size fits all. But some organization or individual has to champion it.
Well, it's great that at least now we have a domestic model that we can.
Well,
follow.
there's several that you have Houston, Dallas, Baltimore's having success, New Orleans having success, Milwaukee's having success. There are United States communities that are effectively preventing and reducing homelessness. There's just needs to be more.
Mark, when I hear you talk about community and it really being a part of the solution, it reminds me of that saying that every joint supplies, right? And you have really started a movement through social media that I love, creating not only an archive of interviews from people who are homeless, but really this treasure trove of news stories. You become your own news organization.
Yeah.
I love this. So, what advice would you have for other nonprofits wanting to do the same, really wanting to be on the forefront of managing their own narrative?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And you said it right there, is take control of your own story, manage your own narrative. So you figure out who your audience is, and then you start telling a good story. One of the advantages that is happening, or one of the opportunities, is YouTube is now the most used app on a television. They've gone past Disney, past
Mhm.
Netflix, past Hulu. So that is why we started video podcasting. It was the quickest way for us to get long form content up where people can watch on a television. We're doing other things too, but that was the quickest. 40% of our views now come from a living room, from a television,
Powerful.
where 3 years ago that was mobile, and now it's a television. That's a massive shift, but it is an opportunity for nonprofits and for profit. The thing is, you have to create content, you have to produce videos that the public actually wants to watch. Most nonprofits, I say it like this when I speak. I put a picture of the tree in the forest that
Mhm.
had been fallen, right? And
Right.
you all heard, if a tree falls in the woods and nobody's there to hear it, does it make a noise? Well, if nobody watches your video or nobody reads your post, nobody looks at your photo, can it create impact?
Mhm.
So often nonprofits, and a lot of it I believe is driven by the nonprofit marketing industry, but they create what they think people want to hear instead of engaging with their audience and saying, or listening to their audience, is how can we provide value to you?
Mm.
um, and that is key. And then repetition. You just can't post a video and then walk away. You have to continue to be consistent with your storytelling.
Mhm. Mark, let me ask you a question. I want to dig a little bit deeper in this. Do you have a team that's helping you to produce that content and to be consistent and keep the repetition? Because I can hear the nonprofit out there, Kevin, saying, well, this guy probably has a team of 14 people. I mean, it's
Right,
easy
right,
for
right,
him
right.
to do
People
this.
are, that's the one of the mistakes. People are always, what? It's just you. It's just me. So
Wow.
for 10 years, it was just me. Now I have a part-time managing editor, and she manages all the news. We post daily news on homelessness, also on Apple News and Google News. So if you're Android or if you're iPhone, we're on your phone. And she manages all that. And then I work with different various freelance producers. We have one, Alex Gasaway, that helps with our documentaries. She's family. We've been working together for 6 years. And for me, we do things a little different in that um, a lot of documentarians go in and they change things, right? And PBS did a documentary on me, and the director was so mad because they were like, "Would you walk in again?" And I'm like, "If you didn't get it the first time, right?"
Right.
So I believe documentarians should document life. They shouldn't interfere. And yes, there's times when audio might be bad or lighting might not be perfect. And so Alex and I, like, we have a documentary coming out before April with Corporation of Supportive Housing, where we actually went into prisons we went into a prison in Dayton, Ohio, but we interviewed these people that had come out of the prison system. And if you have this big crew and big lights, it kind of intimidates people. So
Mhm.
we intentionally are very small, very light. And then we, as I said earlier, we try to produce content in a way that provides value to the people. So it is still mostly me. We're trying to change that, trying to raise money for us to scale, because our work has never been more important than it is right now. But
Mhm.
for us to scale, I need to be able to hire more people for us to be able to uh, increase our programs to reach more people, to educate more people.
Mark, I really love how authentic your work is. And I think that that's part of your formula for success, in that what you're doing is you're reframing the issue. You mentioned volume is key, authenticity is key, standing behind the work and continuing to make it prolific and expansive. But I'm curious, how are you targeting lawmakers or people who are decision makers that can impact your issue? I'm certain that you're doing a great job raising.
Well, that's where we need to raise money to start advocacy campaigns. I learned this last year that a video we did in Alberta, Canada, the stakeholders used it to change welfare laws, but it was very organic. Barbara Poppy, who was the executive director for the Interagency Council of Homelessness, which is the federal response, she was under Obama, is using our Hennepin County video to target lawmakers, right? But it's very much organic, which we have to be able to raise the money to be more intentional with advocacy campaigns, something that we're looking at it right now for the documentary with Corporation of Supportive Housing that's coming out in April. But something that we're doing to target, addiction, does play a role in homelessness. In fact, most people enter homelessness sober, and then to cope, they start using drugs.
Sure.
And what we need to understand is, and if you look at the data, that more people are in houses, more people are in apartments, more overdoses happen in the houses and apartments than outside, right? Americans use drugs. A percentage of them, a small percentage of them, are homeless, and they're going to the bathroom behind a dumpster outside. Might as well have a beer. And I'm not advocating for drinking or using drugs. I'm just trying to say, that lawyer's hitting the pipe, that soccer mom's drinking the bottle, that Amazon workers popping some pills to get through the shift. Americans use drugs. Some of them end up homeless. And we have to look at recovery, harm reduction, and housing.
Wow.
You've been really successful in forging corporate partnerships, Mark. And I'm just curious, can you share how you've been able to cultivate those relationships?
Sure. And that's something that was pre-COVID. It's been harder since COVID. And that is because of in-person events kind of went away, but then also budgets started getting cut, right? And so we've done amazing things with Ford Motor Company, with Haynes. And the key is to, again, provide value. So a lot of people will approach Walmart and think, okay, Walmart wants to make a world a better place. And they go, oh, give us money because we're doing this. They don't realize that if Walmart doesn't sell stuff, they can't give you money. So when you approach a corporate sponsor, you have to do it in the way of, oh, we're going to help you sell stuff. Doing good is good business. A consumer, if they're faced with a Coke or Pepsi, they're going to pick the one that is giving back, is helping the community. And so it is important for brands to give back. We just need more of them to do it.
Mark, as far as giving back, I know very few people who can single-handedly have the impact that you had. I know you've said that you're growing. You want to grow your staff so that you can get to scale, but the scale you've managed to achieve as one person is really inspiring. And with such a complex issue and one that's facing some serious headwinds, how do you keep going? What gives you hope?
And that's a really good question, especially now, because we're all, if you look at any news source, we're in chaos of some kind, right? And so for me, and I'm not spooky, right? It's not like I hear this voice in the head, but I get this impression, if not me, who? Because a smart man, because I obviously have some marketing skills. I mean, I saw recently Netflix had a job listing for something that I could easily do that started at $600,000 a year. So a smart man would go back and do, the for-profit world, make money, vacation in Hawaii, maybe get a new wife, and but instead, this is my destiny. And I don't like the word called, because I believe if you're called, you can hang up the phone. But for me, this is what I was meant to do. It is my destiny.
Oh, I love that, Mark. I love that.
We're really grateful for this conversation and for your tenacity and the work that you do. And
Yes.
you're the first person that I know who has put their frequent flyer miles to use for entirely selfless purposes. So anyway, I just want to sign off by saying thank you for believing in good. Appreciate it, Mark.
Thank you. Thank you guys for having me.
The Science of Good interviews support the work of For Goodness Sakes, a communications firm that uses behavioral change principles to help nonprofits and government agencies advance social causes. Learn more at fgsakes.com.